you want to have a successful organization, if you want to build a successful team, there must be trust amongst the team. But you as a leader have to eradicate the internal conflict, the internal threats. And you do that by being trustworthy. I don't know why, but sometimes leaders have this grandiose sense about themselves that I am above the rules that I created for my team. Yo, what's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. The purpose of this show is to help you thrive, and one of the ways that you can thrive is by developing your leadership skills. So every Monday, I try to drop an episode specifically on leadership. And the past 5 episodes we've dropped is specifically around this book, The Truth About Leadership, by Kouzes and Posner. I feel like I'm always mispronouncing that. Let me know in the chat if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But this is a book I read when I was pursuing completing my master's degree in organizational leadership. And it's been a foundational book to my leadership development back when I was getting my master's degree. And then it continues to be a foundational element as I help teach people about leadership. I've gone through this book multiple times with multiple people, and I figured I would go through it with you guys in the first 10 lessons on leadership within Thrive and Dive's leadership series. So thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out the previous episodes I've done concerning this book, because we are now in the 6th truth from this book. And the 6th truth, so hard to say, 6th truth, too many ths in there, is trust rules. Trust rules. If you want to have a successful organization, if you want to build a successful team, there must be trust amongst the team. Trust is not optional. It's not a luxury. It's a must-have. So if you do not have trust amongst your team, then your team is not going to be all that God intended it to be. Because it says in the scriptures, specifically in 1 Corinthians 13, when it talks about what love is in the sense of loving one another as Christ loved us, it says love never fails. I skipped it. It says, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. So even in the scriptures, there's this mandate that, you have to trust somebody if you're truly going to love them, because love always trusts. And trust is a tough conversation, especially if you've had someone break your trust and backstab you or hurt you in some way. It's hard to trust again when you've been lied to or deceived or backstabbed. But I hope you can come into it with new eyes today and see that, in Scripture, there is redemption and we could trust again. And people are trustworthy. There are trustworthy people out there. Even the imperfect people that don't do the best with things, if they take ownership of their wrongdoing, they can be trusted again. So you as a leader need to build a culture of trust within your team. Simon Sinek, in his leadership book, Leaders Eat Last, he talks about the circle of safety that a team must have. And that's the culture where you feel safe in your own team, right? There's external forces that work against your organization, and there's internal threats that war against your organization. The internal threats can be minimized by good teamwork and good team culture that trusts each other. The external threats, that's kind of out of your control, and you get to battle side by side with your buddy to conquer these external threats. But if you're constantly looking behind your shoulder at the internal threats as you're trying to fight the external threats, you're in a lose-lose situation, right? There's battle going on both fronts. So you as a leader have to eradicate the internal conflict, the internal threats. And you do that by being trustworthy. You do that by creating a culture of trust within your organization. And the first thing you got to do to build a culture of trust is that you personally need to be trustworthy. You know that everything rises and falls with leadership. The leader is your ceiling. So if you as a leader are not trustworthy, then how are you going to expect everyone else to be trustworthy? So you've got to start. You've got to man up or woman up and be the one to trust first, right? And this is something that I try to do. I try to trust every person on my team. Even if they break my trust, we correct it, and maybe it wasn't intentional. Obviously, if it's a repeat offender, they're off the team, right? But I start by giving people my trust. I'm not going to treat them like children. I'm not going to micromanage them. I'm going to trust that they're going to be who God has created them to be. And there's several things I want to point out concerning trust from this book. And when I've been going through this book, I haven't really been reading word for word, but I'm going to take a couple thoughts word from word straight out of this text, The Truth About Leadership. You can find what I'm reading on pages 84 and 85. And I just want to read several statements that this book offers as it relates to trust, and then see how it applies to you and see how you're measuring up with it. So based upon the research, Kouzes and Posner give 4 things you should do in order to increase your trust as a leader. The first is behave predictably and consistently. Leaders should honestly be the most predictable people on the earth. And I don't mean boring, like, oh, you do the same thing, you lead your meeting in the same way, you're so monotone, blah, blah, blah. No, it's that people shouldn't be surprised by your behavior. Like, whoa, why did our leader just completely break one of our values? Like, that's not predictable and consistent. That's hypocrisy, right? So you, as a leader, need to be predictable and consistent. If you have a set of values or a code of conduct or whatever your organization wants to call it, and you are not living up to that, and you're constantly breaking it and finding rules around it, or saying, well, I'm the leader, so I'm the exception to the rule, then you're breaking your trust right off the rip. I don't know why, but sometimes leaders have this grandiose sense about themselves that I am above the rules that I created for my team. And it's the biggest piece of hypocrisy you could demonstrate as a leader. You're not above your rules. If anything, you should be the number one rule follower, and the follower should have the exception to the rule sometimes, right? There shouldn't be a bunch of exceptions for you just because you're the leader. That's not how it works. So behave predictably and consistently. The second thing you need to do to build trust is communicate clearly. I've been a part of leadership organizations where things were not communicated clearly. They're like masqueraded a little bit, or they weren't very direct with what they wanted. And I don't know the reason behind it. Maybe so that they can change what they do in the future, and they don't want to be held by their words, which is such an interesting thing to do. We should be held by our words. If you said it, you got to do it. So this idea of communicating unclearly allows leaders to weasel out of their word, right? I didn't say that. There's a common phrase leaders might say when they're starting to be held accountable for something they said earlier. So be vague enough to where I can weasel out. So leaders don't do that. Leaders that want to be trustworthy communicate clearly and are men and women of their word. So that when a follower points out to them and said, hey, didn't you say that 2 weeks ago? They'd be like, oh, that's right. I did say that. I clearly communicated that. So we need to follow that. I need to follow that. So leaders communicate clearly if they want to be trustworthy. Thirdly, to be trustworthy, leaders must treat promises seriously. And this goes back to our second lesson about credibility, right? If you promise something, if you said you would do something, you must deliver. Promises should not be casual. They should not be like, oh, well, I was just joking, or oh, I didn't mean it that way, or it was just a shtick. I didn't mean actually what I said. Yeah, that goes back to the communicating clearly thing. You got to communicate clearly, and then you got to hold to your promises. You don't take them lightly. If it's something as small as taking someone out to coffee, or something large as a big deal, it doesn't matter what it is. You've got to be a man and woman of your word. You got to treat your promises seriously. You got to treat your calendar seriously. When you said you'll meet with someone, you'll do it. This is very important if you want to build trust. And then lastly, to build trust, according to this book, is that you need to be forthright and candid. And this is all about speaking the honest truth, and it goes with the speak and communicate clearly. If you're not being candid and if you're not being forthright, chances are you're probably spinning something into your favor. If you've got to start a conversation or a meeting out by slanting everything a certain way, by manipulating the conversation, I had a leader that did this so much, and God bless his soul. I hope he recognizes how destructive this is to his leadership and to the trust of his team. If you got to constantly slant things in order to make you look like the hero or to make everything look good and make sure you save face, then you're not speaking candidly, right? If you're as a leader in your organization, you messed up in something, and specifically you were the chief messer-upper, you need to be candid and clear and realize I messed up. Don't shift the blame into something else. Don't gaslight the team. Don't blame the season that you're in or the weather or something of that nature or spiritual forces. That's such a common thing to do in Christian communities specifically. Take ownership, speak candidly, and don't beat around the bush and spin things. So if you want to be trustworthy, you've got to do those 4 things. So hopefully you've seen those 4 things in your own organization. Maybe the negative effect of someone who didn't follow those 4 principles, or the positive sense of, wow, my leader does those 4 things, and that's why I trust him, right? People don't just throw out their trust haphazardly and hope that it lands, right? No, followers measure their leader by the word they say and the standards that are set, and then they choose to put their trust in them, right? So are you a leader that followers are willing to put their trust in? And if you're not, no worries. Well, yes, a lot to worry, but you can change that. It's not forever, right? You can reconcile and restore. It's going to take a lot of time and effort. You know this. Trust takes years to build, but seconds to break. But it is possible. And if you have faith in your team, and if you have faith in the Lord, if you're a person of faith, you can rebuild that trust, because love always does trust in 1 Corinthians 13. And if you have a team full of Christians specifically, they will see that you're making an effort to rebuild that trust. So it's not hopeless, but you are in a bad situation if you have a team that doesn't trust you because of your inauthenticity, your lack of candidness, your lack of staying consistent to the rules, and you need to change that today. And again, maybe that takes self-awareness. Maybe you feel like you're on your high horse and you again are above the rules and people should just trust you because of your position, not because of your personality or your conduct. Then you got a lot of work to do, my friend. That's positional power. Positional power just wields your power over people. Personal power is building rapport with people. We talked about in the previous episode. So do everything you can to build rapport with your team, take ownership of your mistakes, and be a man or woman of your word. Why? Because trust rules. And this is our lesson on leadership here on Thrive and Dive. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you're listening on YouTube, I get my social media platforms mixed up. And give us a subscription. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content here. And if you're listening on Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star rating if you haven't already. This is Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. Have a good rest of your day.